Oh, what is up, everybody? It's your new favorite host. We've got a new episode of In Soccer We Trust, and we've got a lot to talk about. We're talking about Leagues Cup recaps. We're talking about best transfers of the MLS transfer window, and we're going to preview the U.S. women's national team against Sweden, so don't go anywhere. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of In Soccer We Trust. We've got a fun episode, and guess what? We've got a full house here today. We got Jimmy Conradinho, Conrad. I'll leave most of them off because he's gotten good at saying all those. And Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies is with us. I'm not sure if if we call him Jimmy a special guest. I'm trying to categorize this guy. He's got a new backdrop. So I guess we'll start with you, Chuck. CD9. Tell us about this little backdrop you've got, because we've seen 100 different rooms so far. This is 101 at this point. But how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be on this podcast with you guys right now. Let's get into some stuff.
That sounds like a very special guest answer.
Seriously.
Jimmy, you look tired. You look tired, Jimmy. Why would you?
You know what? I'm talking a lot of soccer down here in Sydney, and it's currently 6 a.m. So, I'm cruising, Chuck. I'd love talking about the beautiful game, especially for you two beautiful fish.
The hard part is, with Chuck being a special guest, is and as important as he is, we always have to go through his assistant. We got to send the topics early. So he knew I was going to come off the top, and his publicist was like, well, if he comes at you at the top, respond like this, instead of getting the real Chuck, that's just a little more laid back. But when you're that famous and you got that much going on, you got to come prepared. So I appreciate that. But let's chat a little bit of the Leagues Cup round of 32. Obviously still some games to be played within this one, but Inter Miami. So I guess I'll start with you, Chuck, and then we'll get to the defender's perspective with Jimmy. Lionel Messi. I've watched the goals. I've watched it back 100 times because I just want to know who I'm blaming, right? And with regard to that, there was some great movement, and then obviously with Joseph Martinez on the second one, just freeing up that space. Talk to me about how much of what we're seeing right now is a little bit of Messi and the brilliance of that, and how much of it is just, again, poor defending? Because it's not a secret anymore, and there's only so long we're going to be able to blame poor defending from every single team.
Well, it's not a secret about some of these. Orlando is not a great team. That's not a secret. Atlanta United are not a great team. So we start off at that. The threshold and the bar is low. Inter Miami were the worst team without Messi and Busquets and Tata Martino. Now you add Tata Martino, Busquets, and Messi, you are already going to leapfrog a lot of those teams that have struggled this season.
And it is truly the case, by the way, that it's elevating the quality around them. Like Robert Taylor, like I saw Tom Bogert wrote yesterday, as he became Di Maria as soon as Messi arrived.
Well, how often for us, when you are around quality players, the level of expectation to perform is raised. Yeah. So your first. That's
why I hated playing next to Jimmy, because I was like, dude, it's like if I've got to get him to raise his game, then how do I focus on me? And my dad would text me, "Don't play to the level around you, Heath. Just lead it."
Heath was such a leader back there on the left side. I could
in
remember
the corner hiding myself,
yelling at Jim to drop. I remember those. But no, I think a lot of it has to do with, obviously, Lionel Messi is the best player on the planet and the best player of all time. But people, I don't think, are really taking into context the importance of Tata Martino and the style of play. So setting these guys up to have success and getting the best out of Joseph Martinez. Yes, Joseph Martinez is not the guy anymore. He's further down the totem pole, and he has to work. I was so impressed with Joseph Martinez on the third goal because of the unselfishness, which is uncharacteristic of Joseph Martinez in the box in that position. How often have you seen him pass the ball?
Well, Messi gave him the penalty, so he had to give it back at some point to be like, hey,
it doesn't matter. When you're a 9, you're a 9, and you're within 8 yards of the goal. In that circumstance, you expect him to finish, but he made the right decision in that moment. So it's more about what that means when you're playing with a Leo Messi and a Busquets in terms of the thought process, decision making. That's where a lot of these guys have improved drastically. Is you can't afford to just give a ball away cheaply. Everything is with a purpose. Every pass, every movement, and that's how you get the most out of Busquets, and that's how you get the most out of Messi, and that's the trickle down effect. So I love it.
Jimmy, let me ask you this real quick, just on this one. Obviously, we've seen, and we've all played on teams where there's been big stars, right? And there was at times a confusion for me when I was a defender playing with Thierry Henry on the field, right? Because I knew what the right pass was, and then I knew what his right pass was, right? Which was like,
right.
First, I know what my options are. I do like sort of the run them down in my head of like, where's the right next pass? And then there's the Thierry made the run. You better give him the ball, right? And those were constantly in my head that affected my performances at times, because at times I'm like, dude, Rafa Marquez can hit that ball 60 yards over the top on a dime to Thierry Henry. I can't hit that consistently. That's a low percentage pass.
But do you think you could? One thing to mentally go, I can't do this.
Oh, no.
But
I could
you
for sure.
Could
but
do
time
it.
and place, Chuck. Time and place, right? You've worked hard to win the ball back. Your team's been scrambling. You get the ball, and all of a sudden he makes that run. You've got two choices, right? I've got the pass to keep possession and keep the ball, allow our team to get into shape again, or I've got what I think is a riskier pass that could probably lead to just them winning the ball back, right? Make one person happy or make everybody happy except for one person type of thing. The reason I say that is because at least right now, it looks like they're finding the timing around that to get Leo Messi the ball. Different type of player, because he's going to basically always be open somewhere off the shoulder, right? And want the ball at his feet at all times and not over the top necessarily. But Jimmy, for you, watching those goals as a defender, how do you line up the lines around you? I mean, it's Leo Messi, right? Like he got those over the top, but he can also come underneath at any time. And there's just so many ways that he can beat you.
Okay, so I'll start with the first goal. For those that didn't see it, basically Robert Taylor gets the ball wide, cuts inside, and there's like 8 Orlando defenders looking at the ball, and Messi just slips in behind. I get that he's the world's best player, and he's going to make those types of plays. And when he gets in those situations and receives the ball, his composure is unbelievable in those situations. His technique, his composure, everything's great. His timing of his runs, which Chuck talked about, unbelievable. But the fact that you would, if you're marking him or somewhere in his space and you see him play it wide, and then you would stop looking at him, is crazy to me that you couldn't see the ball go out to Robert Taylor and you're like, okay, I can see Messi and the ball at the same time. That's
Jimmy. The only thing I will add to that is he's been doing that to world-class defenders. It's not just MLS.
Totally. I agree. This isn't isolated to MLS, but now that he's here, I think it's highlighting a deficiency potentially league-wide, which I think has been simmering under the surface for a while, but that's a bigger conversation for another time. What I will add to what Chuck was saying before, and I don't know if you guys remember this particular season, but when Guillermo Barros Schelotto came into the league and started to play for Columbus crew changed. And I remember playing against them and thinking, all of a sudden, Robbie Rogers is like an MLS All-Star. And we always knew he was talented, but he took that next step. Brad Evans was getting into good spots. Alejandro Moreno looked like he was serviceable. Shout out to Alejandro Moreno, who was doing the thankless work. And all his work paid off. And what I realized and what I learned was that when you have a player like Schelotto, you can run with purpose because you know that he's going to get you the ball at the right time. To your point, Heath, that when you're around these world-class players, the way they can hold the ball under pressure allows you to actually run. And we've talked about this before, where if you're making a run and you're a winger, you're like, am I going to run 100%? Am I going to bust my ass to get into that spot, which we're seeing now with Robert Taylor, knowing that I'm going to get the ball if I make this run. Whereas I might make this, like a Heath Pearce may give me this ball because he might have it in his bag. He might not. I'm not going to run 100. I might run it at 80%. And hope that maybe it gets there. Or I'm going to give you 100% runs, and if Heath doesn't give it to me in those particular times, I'm not going to give it to me.
Heath, you gave it to me, and your boy finished. That's all I'm going to say.
That's right. That's right.
True.
And you guys are dunking on, I don't know,
Granada.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who the opponent is.
Doesn't matter. Keep my name out your mouth.
So I think there's a couple elements that are happening here, and I do agree that Tata Martino is setting up the team, knowing and having that experience with coaching Messi before, like where to set him up, where to put players around him that's going to have they get him the ball in good areas. Obviously, Busquets is going to help that. Jordi Alba is going to help that because they have that long experience together. But yeah, I think there's a couple things happening here all at once. And yes, it's not an MLS thing. We've already seen him dunk on a Mexican league team. We've seen him dunk on French and Spanish teams and national teams. I mean, the guy's otherworldly, to your point, Chuck. So yeah, this isn't isolated to MLS, but there is some at times questionable defending that does get me like, come on. I just roll my eyes.
I will add this. We saw what Robbie Keane and Jovinko, Thierry, Zlatan did to this league, right? In terms of Carlos Vela, Joseph Martinez did to this league in terms of numbers, right? Goals and assists, actions. Messi is on another level. He just won a World Cup. What did people think? He was going to come here and dominate, right? I think I was kind of cognizant of the fact that Inter Miami just aren't at the level to make him, find him in the right spots. Even if he's able to facilitate, can his team keep the ball out of the back of the net? Because the back line has been dreadful and Drake Callender can't play with his feet. But all of a sudden, it seems that they've adjusted. And I say take Busquets out of the game, and you're going to not allow Messi to get on the ball. They're still finding ways to get Busquets the ball. They're still finding ways to build out of the back, which goes down back to Tata Martino and his demand.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think that's what's impressive.
Yeah, I like that. Well, as another bit of news from yesterday's matches, I did the Houston
Pachuca
game. Wildly boring in the second half, but again, you see the learnings of. And for me as a player, I would have loved this many games if possible, right? They played Santos Laguna, then they played this one of just a different type of opponent in a game of consequence, right? We play in friendlies or you play in group stages of Champions League, a little bit different, right? Than just these consequential ones. Granted, Houston's now played 3 games and had 3 penalty shootouts, 2 wins and 1 loss. That's got them into the round of 16. But overall, I think a great experience for a lot of these young players that are starting to step up. But Pachuca had a bye because they won the 2022 Apertura, and then LAFC they both came in at different levels, right? And Juarez is not the same as Houston, I don't think, but LAFC absolutely battered them 7-1. I mean, that's got to be for both of you. Do you think that's a turning point for LAFC because they get these hot starts and they've kind of been wishy-washy for the LAFC standard for a lot of this year? I guess what I'm saying is, can they go? Do you think they can go on a deep run? Because we know who MLS wants in the final.
So I love that.
I mean, LAFC Miami, right? Or I mean, from a sales standpoint, you want a Club America or somebody like that, somewhere big where you can really rock the house. But otherwise, it'd be a success story for Major League Soccer.
I had spoken to Cherundolo. I was in Minnesota prior to coming down here to Australia, and LAFC and Minnesota United played, and so I went. Talked to Steve afterwards, and they were overwhelmed with the amount of games they had to play. That was kind of the big theme, even in private. Like, dude, this is just insane. How many games we have to play? And that was a 1-1 draw. And for the first
with the rosters they have, with the rosters
with the rosters that they have, yeah. And I know that there's an overall league frustration. I think for a lot of the coaches, like we have to expand our rosters, and I think that's actually playing into what happened with Juarez. They played a lot of their young players throughout the whole thing. They qualified for the next round. They continue to roll out those young players, and then they ran into a team that knows what the hell they're doing and was ready for it and looked like they're a little bit more well-rested. And I think that's what it's probably frustrating for Cherundolo is I have now a team that got a little bit of rest, and once we get there, we're one of the best. And I thought they showed that in the performance. If Buanga's scoring goals again, Carlos Vela is scoring goals again, it's going to be really hard to slow them down. And obviously they got to tighten it up on the defensive side, but it looked pretty good last night. With regard to Houston and Pachuca, yeah, I mean, I'm still curious as to how, and maybe we have to be 3 years out from this competition and look back as to who's taking it serious and who's not. But it's clear that it has kind of US Open Cup vibes. I think that there's teams that are still trying to decide how they want to approach this with their full teams or with half and half or play just younger players. So I don't know. It's on paper, it's a great competition. I'm still excited to see where it goes. To your point, I think maybe referees are maybe influencing one game or another. If you're an Orlando fan,
well, think about
Miami.
Well, let's talk about the Miami one, but think about Pachuca, right? And teams. You said Open Cup vibes, but Ben Olsen said it. Most teams want to get out of the group just because of the punishment of not is pretty significant, right? So you look at Pachuca, they've got no games leading in, no group stage games. They play a friendly against Oviedo, and then they play this game, and now they're out. And their next game is, I think, the 28th or something of June is their next league match, which is insane amount of time. Now, maybe that's a positive in terms of breaks, but that's a young club. They've had a ton of turnover. You kind of want games, but it does make it a little bit difficult to not take it seriously, considering the ramifications if you go out early. But let's shift over to the refereeing. Chuck, I'm going to start with you, obviously, because you're the striker, and we know which way you'll probably lean here. But the penalty call for Inter Miami. What are we thinking about that?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I've won a couple of those type of penalties.
Yeah, but we know who you are ethically. We know where you fall into the ethical spectrum of playing through the finishing the play on your feet, Chuck.
Yeah,
you're not Alejandro Moreno as Jimmy mentioned before, but you are. Those legs tend to seize up occasionally with a little contact in the box.
Actually, it was really just 1 year where I tended to go down easy, and that was mostly due to the fact that I just wasn't physically there yet. And it was the year after my accident coming back, I felt like I needed to have some sort of advantage, and that gave me an advantage to go down easier because I didn't have the strength like I used to. I could ride through challenges before. If I was close to the goal and I was getting fouled, I was staying on my feet because I knew I was that close to scoring. There was no diving. And obviously, you have to be smart as a striker, knowing what parts of the field to win a foul. If I'm holding up the ball against a bigger center back, we've been under pressure for a bit. I feel a little tug, I go down. Or I exaggerate, and we win the foul, you slow things down, and that's part of the game. And that's just being a professional. Then there's the dark arts, which is more, I'm trying to deceive the ref to get this penalty. And Joseph Martinez, in that instance, felt some contact and dove. And I've done it. I've been guilty of it. The ref was quick to point to the spot. Antonio Carlos should be a little bit smarter in that situation because it's not, the analyst on the game said he just put his hand back, and that was not the case. He put his hand back and did a little grab just to slow him down. But it wasn't enough to cause that reaction from Joseph Martinez when he goes down and wins the penalty. So, yes, it was a soft pen. It shouldn't have been a pen. But once they called it, there was enough contact there. There was a slight grab that they couldn't overturn it. And in my case, in my scenarios, I know that in that instance, Joseph Martinez was looking for the call in that situation. So it's just unfortunate.
Wait, Chuck, how many of those penalties did you win? Like, you fell early, but like, how many did you actually earn?
I can tell you right off the top of my head. Omar Gonzalez, we were down to LA Galaxy at home, DC United. I came in as a sub. I was just recovering from a pulled hamstring that I had. And I'm 1v1 with Omar. It's the 90th minute. I do a step over and I go by. Now, he reaches out with his right hand to kind of just check me. Not to really knock me down or anything, but to slow me down. And that contact put me off a little bit, off balance, and I went down and I won the pen. And he's like, are you kidding me? And he's like, I said, hey, it's a pen. And I finished and I scored. Another instance, which
and now really Omar Gonzalez doesn't like you anymore.
No, we're cool.
Shame.
The worst one though was we were playing at Salt Lake. We're down a goal. Chris Winger. I'm 1v1 with Chris Winger.
Jimmy, before he finishes this, this has a little bit of Charlie doesn't sleep well at night when these things pop into his mind, huh?
I don't know.
He's got to live with this the rest of his life.
I wouldn't be able to talk if it was holding me back. I'm at peace. I have no regrets. I'm at peace. But this is one of those funny moments. So I take a touch. Winger goes to ground. Now I dive over him. I really wasn't trying to dive. I dive over him to avoid a challenge because I couldn't put my foot down. And the ref blows a penalty kick. Now Winger gets up. He goes, Charlie, you know I didn't touch you. You got to tell him. I'm like, nah, bro. I'm taking this pen. That's not on me. And I scored the pen. And I think I got fined for that. It was the first time I think maybe MLS had started to fine players if they embellished or for simulation. I got fined.
Chuck was the reason.
Yeah.
Chuck changed the league forever with his cheating.
Yeah. So
the Chuck Davies rule.
And we got a point on the road at Salt Lake. But I was not proud of those moments. That was never my intention to be someone who's flopping around.
You sound kind of proud now.
Yeah, you do. Why are you smiling while you tell this story saying I wasn't proud? You know?
No, but
you got a goal bonus.
Goal bonus, yeah. Did you return that money? Did you return that money, or did you?
No, I didn't.
Did not.
But
Sure.
I will say, like growing up as a striker, you watched the pros, and there was an element more to the game back in the day to dive, to embellish, and I think as the game has evolved, we are trying to eradicate that. But that's a lot built into a lot of cultures. And so I feel at this time, it's more power through it, stay on your feet. And we're getting to that. You don't see Americans diving, because that is, I feel like now there's like penalties for that. There's a real emphasis to stay on your feet and not dive, not embellish. But I think there's part of it is still understanding that if you are slightly fouled, to take advantage of that. So there's a fine line, and I think there's a balance between taking your fouls versus playing through them and not looking for those calls. But it's I'm not a cheating Chuck Wagon Davies. I'll tell you that.
I'll tell you where there's a fine line, Chuck, between a short answer and a long answer, and that was a long answer. We're late on the break, so we're going to go to our first break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Leagues Cup as well as lots of other things. So don't go anywhere.
CBS Sports Network goes all in with the World Series of Poker. We're talking a full house of characters in a competition flush with cash. The World Series of Poker on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back, everybody. Jimmy, I wanted to give you the stage a little bit to at least pick a game around a 32 or any thoughts you had.
Before that happens, I need to hear from you guys.
Chuck's still talking.
Chuck didn't even know we went to break. He was asking us questions in the middle of the break.
Has there been a striker that you've marked and has dove in the box and won a penalty on you while you were defending?
Not a penalty for me. I'll answer this one quickly. But there was one. My last MLS game was playing up in Toronto, and Dominic Oduro, I got big on, like, I opened my legs up to like stop, but I wasn't moving. I was just standing still, opened my legs wide.
Oh yeah, the block versus the charge.
Yeah, and exactly. It was like what a goalie does every time they come off their line, right? Where they just get big, and I got big and showed both my studs, made no contact with him. He flip-flopped and rolled about 17 times. I got a straight red sent off in my final MLS game, and I remember standing in the tunnel chatting with Michael Bradley, who, joined in on like the misery of me. And we were all just having to go at the referee, and Dom Maduro came in and was like, sorry, man. I was like, yeah, you know what, bud? Like, you could have said that in real time when you rolled around.
Now I know why you're so angry. Now, hey, Jimmy, now
there's a lot
that
of resentment
explains
there.
Everything. He's so angry because of that moment.
Yeah, it was. Wow. It did make me really mad. Jimmy, you in the box?
I was the nicest and cleanest defender there ever was. So I don't remember anything. I do remember Carlos Ruiz though from the Galaxy, El Pescadito, giving me a hard time, and he was known for flopping, so he had a little bit of a reputation, but he was very good at using his body. And if you got caught on the wrong side of him in the box, I believe I took him down one time. That was a little suspect, but he also was very
good at starting offside and getting into weird spots where like he could get you when you weren't looking to where you'd hit him, and once you made that contact, he was halfway down to the ground.
Hold on. He would initiate the physicality, Chuck. You know what I mean? He was so good at initiating it that you'd have to respond in some way, otherwise you'd lose any type of advantage or perceived advantage that you thought you had. I mean that. I don't see a lot of players that set up shop like him anymore. It's kind of like the old basketball centers that would like set up in the post, and he was just so good at like boxing everybody out. I really appreciated that. I didn't like playing against him, but he was fantastic at that particular part of the game.
And what I would add is, as a striker, doesn't that mess with your psyche? If you know the player is in and around the box, he is capable of flopping, maybe you don't anticipate or dive in when you probably should because it's there, but you're kind of hesitant, and that plays to the advantage, right? It's totally mind games, and I think that's where you can gain the advantage if you don't cross the line, but you can go down easy at times.
Fair enough. Well, shame on you, Charlie. Jimmy and I would never do that. Upstanding citizens.
No,
and
that's
true. If it wasn't for Michael Parkhurst, we would have ourselves won the Fair Player of the Year award year over year.
Cheating Chuck. Yep.
But, let's talk about the American invasion in the championship. Auston Trusty joined Sheffield United.
Think about that move.
Yep. I think there was a lot of concern when he originally went from Philly to Colorado, right, of trying to find his own feet and where he was going to make it. And then the move to Arsenal, you go, okay, obviously he's not an Arsenal quality player at that point. But to make that move, I think it's just such a great one for him and an opportunity, right? A huge opportunity for him to get some minutes and learn a lot. Jimmy, as our resident center back, do you like this idea? Do you like the move?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Anytime that you're wanted by a team that is going to splash a little cash to get you, I think it was for $5 million. I think that's smart business. I think Auston Trusty showed at Birmingham that he has qualities that can be improved upon. I think obviously his goal scoring prowess is pretty important, and he scored quite a few goals. But I would say that he's only going to get better with. And my only fear with Sheffield and any team that's getting promoted to the Premier League is you're going to be doing a lot of defending, and so for them to stay. And for the Blades to remain in the Premier League for subsequent years, he's going to have to hopefully play a part and be trusted upon. I know it's a play on words there, but to be a guy. He's 23. It looks like most of the other defenders are relatively young. So I hope that he can get in there and make a difference. But in terms of his future, I think he's much better at getting that opportunity with Sheffield than with Arsenal, who clearly – for $5 million, didn't really think that he was part of the future in some ways, and Arsenal's out here like dishing out the Americans, and Matt Turner might be on the move as well. So,
hey,
but I'm thrilled for Auston Trusty though. Yeah, for sure. I'm thrilled for him. I think it's a great move, and he's in the Premier League, dude. That's what's up.
Chuck, I got two things for you, right? Tom Brady, minority owner of Birmingham City. What do you think about that for you New Englanders out there? Any thoughts on that? And then obviously Coventry also. On the striker front, Haji Wright maybe going to the club on a club record signing. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, well, we could have used Tom's promotion with the Revs when he was in New England.
That's a great shout, by the way.
Yeah, didn't know he was.
If he loved soccer so much, he would have helped you guys out back in the day.
Didn't know he was that much of a footy fan. Could have used his promotion, but no. It's obviously great for Birmingham City when you have a legend like Tom Brady involved. So, I mean, there's nothing much to add except, hey, Tom, he's a part owner. Like,
doesn't it feel promotional though?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Think about a lot of the minority owners in sports. Think about.
But do you think Tom? Yeah,
do you see
Kevin Durant? Kevin Durant's done nothing with Philadelphia Union, right? Now we see outgoing ones like LeBron James with that ownership group. He is outward facing, right? Tom Brady's a very private guy. It's not like he's, and he's not Ryan Reynolds, in terms of entertainment. Do you think this gives a big enough boost? Do you think it's a big boost for, you know what I mean? Like he's proven on the field as an athlete and what he does, but he's not exactly like the personality type that's going to drive eyeballs because he's going to be out waving the flag.
Well, this is an investment, so it's up to him.
He doesn't even look happy to wear the jersey he's wearing right now. He's just like, do I have to? And they're like, dude, you signed the contract, so you kind of got to take a picture.
It's a little bit of like, I'm uncertain what this club is and what did I get myself into. But, I mean, it's up to him because this is a new chapter for him in his life, post-playing career. What does that look like? Obviously, he signed a reported massive deal with Fox. But, the same could be said for a lot of these other athletes who are part owners in these big franchises and clubs. So what can I say is we'll wait and see. But in terms of a real footy fan, you didn't see him coming to Revs games to support the team.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Chuck.
You know what I'm saying?
I find it interesting that Birmingham would be the club that he chose to hitch his wagon to. Obviously, there's domestic clubs, to your point, he could have got involved with, especially with his relationship with the Crafts. And Birmingham is interesting. They haven't been in the Premier League since, the 2010, 2011 season. They finished 17th last year in the championship. He's looking at the table. He's like, yeah, that club.
Yeah.
He has a relationship with the investment, the firm.
It's
or whatever,
an investment thing. It's probably a sweetheart of a deal in terms of the equity he gets for the money that he puts in exchange for. Like Kevin Durant got a great deal compared to what the valuation of the club is, right?
You don't see KD on the field like being involved and tweeting about every match the Union play. So, I mean, what do you expect from these guys? It's a business.
We'll move on from this topic. But the one thing that I did, even at a minimum, he could have helped to really push the Revs forward. Even his power within the city of a new stadium or doing things like that. If he really wanted to help, even if he was like, dude, these guys are annoying, get them out of my backyard. I own this place, send them downtown. He could have done more, and obviously there wasn't an interest there. So it's a pure investment thing. Let's talk about MLS deadline day, winners and losers. Obviously tons of movement. We're not going to go through all of them. If you want,
Miami's the clear winner here.
Clear winner for you, Jimmy. Wrap that one up quick.
Matthew
Hoppe goes to the San Jose Earthquakes. LAFC shipped off Cifuentes.
I mean,
LA Galaxy got another defender.
Out and Diego Rossi in.
That's a big move because
that's
not like for like
at
all.
FC Dallas. Give me one player that or one team that you think. It doesn't have to be specifics or going over all of them, but do any of those stand out to you? Obviously,
Vancouver
I would love
Whitecaps if they've added Richie Larea and Adekugbe. Those are two quality outside backs. You could put them wingers, outside backs. Vancouver has been able to string these results together and be competitive, and this takes them up a bit, another notch, just because now they're much more competitive down the wings. And I would not sleep on those moves from Vancouver. Well done on Vancouver to get those over the line.
Jimmy, anything from you? Any one player, one
no,
team?
Well, yeah, I thought the crew, obviously Zilla Ryan going to Saudi Arabia for only $2.5 million, or if that's what's being reported, is interesting. I know that he was close to being towards the end of his deal, and he was forcing that move out once it became, or forcing the hand of the crew. But I find that to be an interesting deal, that we couldn't get more out of Saudi Arabia for a player that's actually had some pretty good success in the league. But bringing in Diego Rossi, I think was really smart. And Wilfred Nancy, I think, continues to prove, and Ted Bezbachenko, who is in charge of the front office and stuff, I think they're making good, smart moves to have long-term success, or short-term and long-term success. So I'd keep an eye on the crew. I think they know what they're doing, and I think they have all the pieces in place to have some success. But yeah, I mean, Inter Miami's the big one for me because, and we've talked about it before, I believe that these moves are going to help facilitate hopefully a new dawn of salary cap implications. And I hope
next season there'll be changes. There
has to be. And I think that you have to have, I hope they get to a less is more approach, Chuck, where you start losing some of these gams and tams and crap, and hey, listen, here's your floor. You got to spend at least $15 million on your thing, and here's the cap. It's at 30 or whatever, and start to push into a direction where I think the league needs to go. So I think the Inter Miami one will be the most important because I think it'll have long-term implications.
Let me ask you guys this real quick, just on Matthew Hoppe going to the Earthquakes. They've got Cade Cowell on one spot. I know he's linked to some moves abroad, but really hasn't found that consistency at the club level that we've seen at other times. Still just like a budding player with a ton of upside. You've got Espinoza on the other side, who's their best player. You've got
killing it.
You've got Abobasi up top, and you've got Montero, who's the 10. Maybe you can play Espinoza inside, but whatever. We'll leave that for another day. Do you think this is another move? Because a lot of Matthew Hoppe's moves have just seemed like the next move, not necessarily the move where a club is going after him or touting him as the guy for a certain position. Do you think this is another one of those, or do you think we could maybe see a turnaround from him? Because he's sort of been lost for a couple of years now. Yeah,
I mean, he's unproven. And in this scenario, I've been there. you're trying to find your feet again. And it seems like confidence is long gone. And even with this play, it's not what we've seen at his best. He's not even close to that. So he's been humbled. And you go to San Jose Earthquakes, he doesn't just walk into the team, and I don't think he was going to walk into any team. He's got to earn minutes just like you would anywhere else. I think the idea is you come back to the States, there's more familiarity. You probably have more opportunities to play. At least he's going to be coming in as a sub, as opposed to if he's in Europe, he doesn't even get in the 18. Mm-hmm. So I hope he can rediscover some form and get some playing time. But we know nothing's a given. Nothing's a guarantee. So people shouldn't think, oh, he's going to light up the league. He's got to prove himself all over again. And I hope that he gets the opportunity to do it.
I think what's interesting about him is he's shown flashes of what he's capable of. So that consistency is going to be important. I also will add that I think Luchi Gonzalez is very good with young players. Matthew Hoppy's only 22. And I think seeing what he can do with Hoppy is going to be interesting. It's a 12-month loan, which I also find interesting. I thought maybe it'd be like a 6-monther just to see out the MLS season, then kind of reassess in the January window. A 12-month loan from Middlesbrough is an interesting sign from Middlesbrough that, like, all right, just take him for a year. Let's see what happens. So for him to get the back half of one MLS season and get the first half of another feels like interesting timing. But of all the coaches that I've been around and know, I got to play with Luchi back in the day and really impressed with how his coaching career has gone. He's like a young player whisperer. And if he can get through to Matthew Hoppy, that could be a good thing for the U.S. men's national team. I know that's a big thing. And I know he's still working on, the potential superstar in the making with Cade Cowell. And I think he's actually with a good coach as well. But I think he's a good player or a good coach, Matthew Hoppy, to have in Luchi. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out.
All right, we're going to go to our second and final break of the show. When we come back, we got U.S. women's national team versus Sweden preview. A lot to talk about, so stay right there.
And the whole world is wondering, what's it going to take to stop this U.S. team?
Easy, love. We mark Alex. What about Rose?
Oh, bloody Rapinoe.
Rapinoe scores!
We could get younger players.
They already did that.
We have veteran experience.
Listen to what you're saying.
That is world class.
What's it going to take to stop this U.S. team?
They're faster. Slower.
This precision.
With style.
Good luck with that.
There is certainly no love lost right now in terms of the vibes of the women's national team, but I love it all because the pressure is on. So let's talk about this a little bit. Chuck, I'll go to you first on this one. What do you want to see? What changes do you want to see? What tactics do you want to see? I mean, obviously we've covered this quite a bit, even in your absence, just the overall mood of the national team, the comments that have been made about the national team, their performances. But this is the knockout rounds, which is where they wanted to be. It's against a familiar face in Sweden. But is there any specifics you would want to get out of this one as Jimmy opens up his curtains to let us see the sunrise in jealousy just once again?
It's beautiful. What I will say is now that Roosevelt is suspended for this game, and she was kind of what was missing in terms of creativity, although she'd get into the final third and I think lacked the ability to combine and was a little bit too direct. I'd like to see Julie Ertz move to a defensive midfield role. So you lock up the back four, protect the back four, and then you have Lindsay Orant, and I'd like to see Ashley Sanchez get the start because she's super creative. You still have Sophia Smith on the left, Alex Morgan up top, although I would have liked to see Sophia Smith in the group stages play the 9 because she has a little bit more to her game in terms of dribbling ability, changing the pace. I think she's a little bit more dynamic than Alex Morgan right now, but I don't see Alex Morgan being benched at this point. So Sophia Smith, Alex Morgan, and back to Trinity Rodman on the right. And I think what's been missing for this U.S. team is the dominance in midfield, winning second balls, being a little bit better in terms of playing in between the lines, having Sophia Smith and Alex Morgan and Trinity Rodman, the front three, create more, interchange, combine more. We haven't seen that. And the U.S. typically dominate the midfield, whether it's winning every challenge and being direct or controlling the ball and using every ounce of width on the pitch and making the other team chase, spreading them out before they go for the killer pass. We haven't seen that. And so this team doesn't have an identity at this point. And I think that's what's concerning, is because you don't know how they're going to play. You don't know their style. You don't know their strengths necessarily. It's a lot of brilliant individual, but that's not how you win the World Cup. You see the other teams that have come together as a team, and that's always going to trump the individuals. So I'm hoping they find some sort of chemistry and symmetry in not only the midfield, but the attacking trio. That's what's been missing.
I'm going to jump in here because I agree with you, Chuck. I think that Julie Ertz needs to get into the midfield. I think that she has presence. That's ultimately her best area, I think, to really dominate and put her stamp on the game, which she's shown countless times for the women's national team over the years. I'd actually bring Alana Cook back into the team and play center back next to Naomi Girma. They have been working on that for better or for worse. I'm not necessarily the biggest Cook fan, but when you think about what she can bring to the table and how good Sweden are on set pieces in particular, I think that another big body back there. And actually she has more reps with Girma over the last year at center back than Ertz and Girma do. So I think bringing Cook in, taking Andy Sullivan out, putting who I don't think is very mobile, and I think you're going to have some mobility, and I think Ertz can cover a little bit more ground. I think the team probably is more fluid in that spot. But here's my big one. I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. So you take out Andy Sullivan, put Ertz in there. Alana Cook comes into the center back spot. And instead of having Ashley Sanchez, who I appreciate, but she has not played 1 minute yet in this tournament, but I really love her game. And that's still an option. I would be open to that. But dropping Alex Morgan into the 10 spot. So you'd have a midfield of, she's already doing it anyway, right? She's starting high and dropping into those areas anyway. Her starting position would be a little bit different. And putting Sophia Smith at the 9. So you'd have Morgan and Smith ultimately more central, which I think would be better for Sophia. Trinity on one side, maybe Lynn Williams on the other. And then you'd have a midfield. On paper, it sounds amazing. You'd have Ertz, Haran, and Alex Morgan. And I think that Alex has done enough, and maybe her career is changing, so she's got to adapt and dropping in. And when I start to think about all those players on the field at the same time, when you have a Lynn who had great chances in the game against Portugal, didn't take those chances, but was probably in those areas, give her another run out, give her another chance to settle in and maybe hit the back of the net. And then you have Trinity and Sophia and Alex all on the field at the same time. I just feel like adding another attacking player while solidifying the midfield with Ertz, to your point, Charlie, I think would be really smart. But that just means Cook's got to come in and have a big-ass game. And I believe the team overall, and I know, Heath, I want you to jump in here, but I believe the team overall is ready to have that one big game of this tournament. And they seem to have Sweden's number in this competition. Sweden has their number in the Olympics for whatever reason. But in this competition, we seem to have Sweden's number. So long may that continue. So I'm very curious and excited to see how they perform in this game.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I wanted to, before we jump back to it, just ask you both generally about this, because we've seen this now. We went through this whole narrative in 2022, but now in 2023, with the fact that you generally see the top clubs go through, and the clubs, national teams go through, right? On the women's side. There's been powerhouses for a long time. There's institutions, so to speak. But with Brazil and Germany out, I think it's opened up a new conversation just about the growth of the sport and the development of that in other countries. Just maybe there's still the gap is closing in the top 10, but then there's a whole nother row when I look at that Portugal and the way that they played in their first ever World Cup. It's a pretty incredible growth curve to be that good, where I thought that they should have beat the U.S. women and should have gone through and are quality enough to be a knockout round team. Do you think that there is that much of a gap being closed and that much time that we're a Brazil and a Germany going out isn't just like we see in other tournaments where it's just like, random one-off bad tournament, but more so that, it was a bad tournament. Plus the quality of opponent is shifted now, and it's no longer just like clear favorites and the clear favorites go through every time. I guess
easy answer. Yes. The field has grown considerably because of what the U.S. women have been able to do. And they've put, you look at that 99 team, they have tried the absolute most to make it apparent that women should be getting the same opportunities on the pitch as the men do, and that FIFA should treat the women like they do the men. And you're starting to see more countries adopt the ability to train the women and to get them the proper coaching, and they're starting to see what happens. Mm-hmm. And that is, they can ball, that they can also make money, and it's a business. And you look at Jamaica, what they've been able to do, Nigeria, Colombia. It's really inspiring to see these women go out there and represent their country and represent women, and also highlight and showcase the growth of the game for women. So it really started with the U.S. women showing what it's all about, and taking those risks and standing up for what's right and speaking their mind, and look at where the game is today. So for me and for us, I mean, Jimmy, you're there at Fox, but me being able to cover it with CBS every day and watching the games, that's been the best part, is covering these matches and seeing like some of these skills, like the skill checks, Portugal, Brazil, but also, some of these smaller nations. Like I am just so inspired by some of the skills that we've seen in the development of the game. So I'm a big advocate and pumped to see how far this game has come for the women.
Yeah, I mean, give a shout out to the best young player in the tournament, Linda Caicedo from Colombia. I mean, 18 years old and super special. I mean, she's ridiculous. I look forward to seeing how she plays for Real Madrid this upcoming season. But to your point, both of you, the money's coming in, right? And the U.S. is probably a victim of their own success here, because they had the infrastructure early. They were ahead of the curve in a lot of different ways. And now that's being leveled. All these other countries are having those same luxuries. I use luxuries with some air quotes because there's still a lot of work to do in the space, of course. But the coaching has gotten a lot better too. I look at Desiree Ellis in South Africa, despite their limitations and despite them not having the funding, there's now coaches with vast experience that are jumping into this area. So I look at Desiree Ellis
Morocco.
in South Africa. Yeah, right. Reynald Pedros from Morocco. I mean, he left Lyon and won 2 women's Champions League titles to come take this over. And Morocco, I don't know whatever Morocco's doing, but there should be somebody over there like taking notes, because obviously the men had tremendous success getting to the semifinals, and now the women have, after losing 6-0 to Germany in the first game, they won back-to-back 1-0 games. It really speaks to the quality that they have. And just think about their future. You start to extrapolate what that looks like. Even Jamaica, Haiti, all these CONCACAF teams. I think Panama and Costa Rica still have some work to do. Mexico's nowhere to be seen. Canada's going to be in a little bit of a transition. But I'm with you guys. It's really exciting. And this tournament's been a hell of a ride. And the fact that Germany and Brazil and Canada are already out, I think really speaks to where this game is going. And it feels as wide open as ever. And it's always going to be tough for the U.S. to win 3 consecutive World Cups, because nobody's ever done it before, probably for a reason, because it's just hard to extend that over multiple tournaments. But I'm hopeful that the U.S. can get the result against Sweden.
Well, they haven't not done it yet, so they're still alive in this one. So let's move on to final thoughts for either of you. You can make it about the U.S. women's national team. You can make it about Sweden. You can make it about Timo Weah scoring, Weston McKennie involved in the goals. You can make it about anything you want to wrap up this show. I'm giving you free reign, guys, because that's the kind of guy I am. You know what I mean? I want to send you guys off towards your weekends with just the most positive of energies.
Yes, I'll start with just, we're all rooting for the U.S. women, and I don't think it for one second this is about mentality. The reason why they're in the place that they're in today, the dancing, the self-promotion, the sponsorships, that's part of the game. It's evolved. That's where we are today. But I think, yes, they haven't delivered in certain moments on the pitch, but I think this comes down to coaching, and it's as simple as putting the right group together. I don't think Vlatko's really experimented enough to figure out what is the right group and where am I getting the most out of each player. So tactically, but also just in terms of player selection, I think that is a big miss. And to get as far as they are now as individuals, I think that speaks more highly of the players to get to where they are now, given that this hasn't really been the best coaching demonstration that we've seen for the U.S. women in a long time. So I'm hoping he tries some different things, because what his substitutions have been off. I think he's been too defensive. The inserting of Julie Ertz as a center back when she hasn't been center back for a number of years. It's concerning. So I'm hoping enough of the leaders step up and have a conversation with Vlatko and say, hey, you got to make some changes, and that he takes that advice to heart.
Well said.
Okay,
Chuck. I mean, again, a long final thought, Chuck. I'm going to be honest with you.
I don't think it was that long.
It was a bit long. I saw Jimmy. I literally saw the sun come up from Jimmy's shoulder over to the top of his head by the time you wrapped that one up. Jimmy, give me a final thought. It's a singular.
Final thought.
It's a singular.
I believe in the U.S. women's national team. They are due to have a big performance. I hope that Vlatko pushes all the right buttons. I hope the players are up for it, and at the very least, just match the intensity that we know that they're capable of. They've had a couple slow starts. I think that's all going to click into gear here because there's two different tournaments at a World Cup. There's the group stages, and then there's the knockout rounds. And the U.S. women are the best of the best in the knockout rounds in this. So, come on, ladies. I want us to do it.
Yes.
I
love it. Let me be another guest.
Yeah. My final thought is exactly what alt history just said, that Jimmy is part of the conspiracy that's trying to make people think that Australia is a real place and that the earth isn't flat. That is it from us on In Soccer We Trust. Of course, on behalf of myself, Jimmy, Conrad, Charlie, Chuck, Wagon, Davies, our producers, Alex and Dez. We will see you all next week, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time. 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for listening in to In Soccer We Trust. Take a minute to leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher.
Great to see you, cheating Chuck.
We're also available in video, so subscribe. Hit that like button.
Do it.
Comment.
Subscribe.
Join in on the conversation, and we will see you guys next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Go.
Much love, everybody.
YouTube national team.
USA. Let's go.